Hi everybody and welcome to episode 6 of my school leader interviews. I've had my day in Blackpool, in sunny Blackpool, and I spent the morning with Stephen Tierney in his school, and I'm now in St George's over the kind of other side of Blackpool. Yes. Is it? Yeah. With Mr. Warnock. Graham Warnock, the head teacher.
Hello.
And Chris Wardle, the deputy head teacher.
Hello.
Have I got that right?
You got it right, yeah.
Amazing, I'm doing well. As usual, I've kind of got my mix of personal questions about leadership, and I'm hoping we can, I hate this phrase, but dig down into the kind of behaviours and the things that school leaders are doing, and particularly these guys in this school context in Blackpool. So I don't know if you want to start just by introducing yourselves and the school that you're working in and the context that you're working in.
Okay, I'm Graham Warnock. I've been here for 20 years, not as head, into my 4th year as head teacher in Blackpool, through lots of different phases of development at St George's to where we are now as a school, doing really, really well locally, really, really well nationally, and with a great team of staff.
Okay. And, oh yes, Chris, go.
I'm Chris Wardle, and I'm a deputy head teacher, and I've worked in lots of Blackpool schools, and I've been working in this school since 2017, so yeah.
Perfect. And this is slightly different from the other interviews I've done because there's 2 people in it. Yeah. So I'm going to fire, the first set of questions are kind of short but sweet questions, so you can answer as quickly or as long-windedly as you wish. What's the first thing that you both grab in the morning?
Okay. It's the dog. I grabbed the dog because the dog sneaks into the bed in the middle of the night. We got this dog at Christmas. I was dead against dogs. I've been a cat person all my life. But I give in. We got a Cavapoo at Christmas and said it'll stay downstairs forever. And then gradually it started to sneak up the stairs. And then it started to sleep on the bedroom floor. But now by the middle of the night, somehow, by stealth, it sneaks onto the bed. And usually, no, not usually, always on my side. It ends up on top of me. So when I wake up, I'm usually suffocating under this dog, so it's grabbing the dog to take it off.
Happy days,
yeah.
Happy days. I'm not a pet person, I have to say that. I'm very kind of pet, I don't even know what the word is. Yeah. Not pet phobic, just, I'm not a pet person. Maybe that makes me a worse person.
Yeah. I wouldn't say so, but I never liked dogs before because dogs have always bitten me 5 times. Yeah. That's why I was against dogs. I've been a cat person, but now I've sort of swung the other way. I'm more of a dog person than a cat person.
And you, Chris?
I can tell you, it's religious with me. Every single morning, I'd like to say that I grab my wife, but I don't. I grab my phone.
No!
Wait! I'll switch it on, and I go to Sky Sports. And I just pray that the dream that I've had for the last 7 years of Manchester United not doing so well is just a dream. And unfortunately, it's like Groundhog Day every single day, and I just see the same stuff. So
good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. And a slightly more serious point now, but who would be your biggest inspiration in life then, Graham, to start with?
It's probably nobody famous. I'd say it's been my vicar at church. It's probably been a big inspiration to me because he was a teacher, became a vicar, really inspiring speaker as well. Through his preaching, really, it was a really good set of moral values. A little bit controversial, I suppose, because he was the Reverend Ian Paisley at the time, growing up in Northern Ireland. But I think just his passion and his moral compass and his knowledge was something I thought. Yeah, when I was growing up, I was either wanted to be a vicar or a teacher, and from a very, very early age, even before I was in my teens, those were the 2 routes that I wanted to go down, one or the other. Then I've actually ended up with a dream job working in a church school, so it all worked out for me.
That's really interesting. And Chris, yourself?
Probably my granddad for me. He was a great man. He had really strong morals, and he was, every time I sat with him, we always used to speak about life, and he used to tell me about his experiences, about the war, and what he did in the war, and his particular role, and He never went into too much detail and he never glorified it, but he always came across as being an upstanding man, and it was always somebody that I wanted to emulate.
Yeah, and do you think in any way that those people or those experiences have played into the way that you try and lead this school, Graham, in terms of, has that played in?
I think it's quite a big part of that, and again it comes back to the Christian ethos and those Christian values, which are really everyday values in life, but also just having determination, quite a steely determination at times to try and improve things and make things better. And I suppose for Paisley, it was trying to bring about a peace process in Northern Ireland and determined to do that.
Yeah, and Chris, moving on to, again, leadership / personal questions, but what do you think people notice about you? Can I say what I've noticed about you?
Go on.
You're very passionate.
Extremely.
Yeah.
I care.
Yeah.
I think that's because of my upbringing now. I was brought up as a Blackpool free school male boy, attending a Blackpool school, and I've always been in education, but I've always been around people that felt as though people in disadvantage can't. And I was the first person in my entire family that went to university, and I've always thought that you can do anything, you can be anything that you want to be. And so my sole purpose in life, my mission to date, has been to educate Blackpool children in order to tell them and demonstrate to them that, you know, I'm living that walk, I'm passionate about their education, and I know that they can be every bit the success that they want to be. It's there for them to grab. They just have to take it. But what I'm not willing to do is I'm not willing to put up any excuses that they can't, because they can.
That's amazing. And Graham, what about yourself in terms of what you think people notice about you?
I think people, when they first meet me, think, what's he actually saying? I do not understand what this man is saying. I think it's my accent. I think it takes a little bit of time for people to tune in to all of the wisdom that I've got to impart on people. So I think that's always the first thing. Can you slow down, please? Or have you been back to Northern Ireland recently? That's always the first thing. You're not from around here. It's the sort of thing people always pick up on. And something I'm conscious about, because sometimes I know I need to pronounce my words a little bit clearer.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you, again, Chris, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but just from your perspective, Graham, what do you think is your biggest weakness or fatal flaw as a leader? And we'll check. It's good having Chris here because he can verify this as well.
I think I'm impatient at times. I think I am impatient. I'm impatient for lots of things. I'm impatient for change. I want things to happen quickly, although I know that they can't always happen quickly, and that's not.
And how do you think that expresses itself? Sometimes in a negative way, if it's a weakness, because I hate weaknesses, guys, to strengths. It's like the classic job interview thing. What's your weakness?
I didn't think that was a strength. I think sometimes maybe there is that rushed element, and sometimes it's not thinking it through totally. Although I do think a lot, but it's not thinking it all through and actually what is going to be the actual final outcome. You think it all through. Sometimes you have to, don't you? Sometimes you have to just go with it. But then sometimes, I suppose looking back on leadership in the past, I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I should have just waited at that moment in time. I suppose you learn that as well.
That makes sense.
But impatience in general, sometimes I am, if I want, if I'm queuing, get impatient as well. It's that society, you want to get through things quickly and move on to the next thing sometimes. So that's some of it.
And what about you, Chris?
I think my biggest weakness would be, especially, and I still make the same mistake now, and I've been trying so hard, but it's sometimes making a decision when you don't need to make a decision. It's not being afraid as a leader to put your foot on the ball, to actually stop and to say to somebody, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Think about it. And sometimes when you go home as a leader, you might be presented with something, and the way in which you deal with it 24 hours later in the morning is a completely different way, in the way that you might have dealt with something at that time. So sometimes I'll slip back into the old Chris culture, but I've been really chiselling away at sorting that, because I think I often make better decisions after resting, thinking and contemplating on it. Sometimes that has caused impatience in others.
Yeah.
Because they've been like,
Not me.
I'm not talking about Graham, but sometimes it's causing impatience in others because they want you as a leader, they want you to you think you know everything, and they think that you're able to make those snap decisions and it's always the right decision, when actually it's not. And I think great leaders, or those who want to be great leaders, have got to think really carefully and just pause before they do something.
Yeah.
I heard Stephen before talk about policy and procedure.
Yeah.
So important. Consult
Yeah.
policy and procedure before you make decisions. Make sure that you're on solid ground.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And Graham, what's the biggest or the one personality trait that you don't have much time for?
For me, I think it's easy. It's arrogance. It's people thinking that they're better than other people, and it can be for lots of different reasons.
Yeah.
Because where they're from, what their upbringing was like, because they're welfare, because they're famous, all those sort of things. Just that in general, because we're all as good as each other, and that's what in this school we're making sure that all our children do as well as each other, and there's no arrogance. And sometimes you get it in teaching and in leadership and in schools, that there is that this school is better than another school, but we're all in it for children. So I think for me, across anyway, because I think at this school we're very humble, and it's when you come across it, it's something, well, yeah, it is something I haven't got time for. Yeah.
Now, Graham, you talk about humility, but those socks you're wearing, mate, they do go against what you just said. In case you're wondering, Graham is wearing the most hideous socks I've ever seen. We will show them at the end. We won't ask you to show them now. But they're the colour of my hair, and they've got like palm trees on them. That gives you a bit of an idea on them.
It's a happy place.
Appalling, absolutely appalling. Chris, comfortable silences or non-stop talking?
Definitely for me, comfortable silence. Yeah, it's something that marriage helps you with. She won't be watching this. She doesn't look at Twitter, so I can really get away with saying nearly anything. Well, maybe not. But yeah, certainly, it's definitely comfortable silences. I like those.
Lovely. I'm going to ask you both this one, but we're moving on to kind of, and it'd be good if you both just chipped in on the same question, which is, and it's about your, I suppose, your context, and moving on to teaching and learning matters, I suppose. So what challenges have you encountered in this school, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
There's been a lot. There's been a lot over a short period of time. The school that you inherit, naturally you're going to have to look at that and look at what you would want to change. I think for us it was looking at inheriting the school 4 years ago in deficit, with not a great culture of behaviour in school, with teaching and learning, some pockets of brilliance, mixed quite across lots of areas of school, lots of supply teachers at one point. So those were the challenges, and as a result of that, the students didn't achieve well, and they didn't get what they need to get to move on in life, and they were being let down by education in general. And those are the biggest things to change, especially in relation to behaviour and culture, and in teaching and learning. And getting those two elements right in the school leads to quite a quick fix initially, and actually sustainable if you keep being consistent with that and moving on, moving forward. And, with a really supportive trust behind you, though, who share the same vision and values, that makes life a lot easier as a leader in the school, because you know you've got the support of a trust that understands context, and the context of Blackpool. And the context of Blackpool is, as we probably all know, and it's very well publicised, isn't it? There's high levels of deprivation, high levels of social problems right across the whole town.
I think, just to put it into context, I think that Blackpool, I think you mentioned this earlier, has 8 out of the 10 most deprived wards in the UK that are in Blackpool.
Yeah.
So it is a very, economically disadvantaged area.
Yeah, it's not what some people would perceive as Blackpool. When I was growing up, I wanted to live in Blackpool. It was, even in Northern Ireland, you wanted to live in Blackpool, and there is still that perception from some people on the outside that's a great place to come. And it is. And we want to provide children with great education, but it has lots of issues and problems that I think collectively across the town we're all trying to sort out and make things better. But it's not an easy job. teaching's not an easy job anyway.
So how have you, and again either of you can answer this, how have you sorted out behaviour, so to speak? How, you know, if you're saying it was in this condition, what are the things you've done?
We looked at and we decided where did we want this school to be in a few years' time. It was going through a whole visioning process collectively with a team of people. Where do we want St George's to be? What do we want St George's to look like? What do we want our students to do? How do we want our students to behave? So collectively, as a large group of stakeholders, and we include everybody in that, we drew up our SG way of what we wanted our students and our staff and all the stakeholders to act and do on a daily basis. Simplified our systems, processes to make it as simple as possible. Took everything away from teachers that wasn't related to teaching as much as possible so they can just teach, and then just really over-communicated the message of this is our standards all the time. This is our standards of behaviour, this is our standards of culture, this is what we expect for lateness, walking on the left, all those things that you would do or you should do in schools to try and get behaviour right. And always saying that our key priority at St George's is culture and behaviour, and every single day it's culture and behaviour. And we look at a development plan, it's culture and behaviour, and every single day, us, the rest of the leadership team, the rest of the school, it's culture and behaviour. And there's things going on behind that, because the teaching and learning goes on in behind that, and the CPD and how we develop and grow teachers and leaders goes on behind that. But every single day as the leaders, our role is to make for the teachers in that classroom just to be able to just teach and to want to come to work every day and wake up with a smile on their face, because they know that all they need to worry about is teaching, because that behaviour's right.
Yeah, I think it's also down to that immovable, unshakable object, which is in the senior leadership team of the school, that we will support staff and we will support them to the hill, because we've developed all of this together, and it's about us, when we're shifting that culture, that they know that they're on solid ground all the time, and whatever they do in terms of...
You're talking about trust
there. Yeah, absolute
yeah.
Trust. And then it's also interesting, because we were talking about before about teachers that have joined us, and teachers will join us from different organisations, and those different organisations have different cultures. And when they're coming into your culture, they'll adopt your culture. But what's really important about that is that sometimes they're seeing things that they haven't seen before. And we really trust our staff, and we trust them to do a really good job, and we don't micromanage. And that's really important.
Can you give some examples? I mean, I'm going to read you something that I tweeted out. It was either yesterday or the day before. This was a message to me. I've started at a new school. We have to have every page marked every 5 days, including tick and flick. We have to mark in 2 coloured pens, and also have homework and assessments to mark. We also have a requirement for 3 or 4 different levels of differentiation for each task in each lesson. So that was one of many messages that I get that are kind of on a similar line, which saddens me and frustrates me. But what have you stripped away, and what are you doing to basically make those teachers' lives easier here, as opposed to what we've just heard?
I think the easy answer is none of that. We've taken away all of that. We've taken away the majority of markings. There's only key things that has to be marked, because that's a massive thing. We've centralised the whole behaviour systems. We've done away with written reports.
Yeah, data-related targets.
Data-related targets. Coaching
observations.
No observations either.
No observations.
No observations.
No. So you were mentioning something earlier, which was very interesting, about the learning walks and the focus of the learning walks. Can you maybe touch on that a bit more?
Yeah, can do.
And it's all about, we've shifted the culture to one where when we go into a lesson to have a look at what's going on, we're not looking at the teacher. We're looking at the pupil, so we'll use the Early Careers Framework, and we've developed 10 of the key strands from the Early Careers Framework. And so recently we've been going into lessons, and we've been looking predominantly at culture, ensuring that the culture's right, but supporting staff. So what do we want in terms of the culture being right? Well, we've microscripted everything that we want for the culture to be right. So all staff know this is what we expect. We know what we're expecting, because we've collectively written it together. So we know what we're expecting, and when we go into class, we're looking for that, but we're looking for the pupils to step up. So the pupils
So
know it.
you're basically saying, look, you're asking the teachers to follow the culture and the policy. That's all they have to do. Is that essentially
I think
where
that
you're coming from?
when you boil it down like that, that is as simple as it is. Because when it comes to teaching, I don't care how teachers teach in this school. You know, if it's effective and the kids are enjoying it, they're learning loads of stuff and doing really, really well. If they want to sit at the front, they want to sit at the back, side, stand, whatever way they want to do. If they want to do stuff working together, I'd want to have them all facing the front. Whatever works.
So what you're saying is you don't prescribe pedagogy here. You're saying you don't prescribe pedagogy. You're saying you don't have to do pedagogically this, and this.
No.
No, you teach in a way in which is effective for you. We all teach differently. We're all different. So what would we rather have? Would we rather have a load of people that are shifting into a culture that we say, this is how you must teach, and you must do it like this, and then they become completely effective? Or it's a bit like when I was growing up in teaching, and we were under a certain government where it was all about frills and spills and smoke and whizzes and bangs, and that's how you got the kids engaged, and you had to swing off a light shade before you got an outstanding in your lesson. And that's something that went cut against the grain of a lot of staff. And I know a lot of great teachers that have left the profession because they couldn't adopt to that, which was the expectation or the order of the day or the perceived expectation. And actually, what we're saying here is, you want to teach the way you want to teach, because if it's the way you want to teach, you're going to do a great job. But just coming back to that shift in the lens focus, if a child is not doing what's right and what's required, then we will hold the child accountable for not doing what's right and what's required. And I might say in a lesson to a child, you're not underlined. Simple. I'll take a simple example. You've not underlined your title. You've not put the date. You've not put classwork. These are the expectations that you're being told. But what I'm not doing is I'm not going up to the teacher after the lesson to say, you haven't done your job. You haven't made sure that that child, little Billy over there, is doing what's expected. Because I've done that. I've just spoken to the child. And what we want to do is reassure staff the trust between leaders and teachers, because we're all leaders after all, but to ensure staff that actually what we're doing here is we're supporting them. There's going to be none of these, can you step into my office conversations because little Billy hasn't underlined his title.
Yeah, I understand. And reflecting on that a bit further, what does genuine, authentic teacher well-being mean or look like to you?
I think it's if teachers come to work and they're happy to come to work and energised and positive and stepping into that classroom, they've got a passion for what they want to do. And that comes from removing all the nonsense that teachers have been asked to do over the years, so that they just come in as happy people and just teach. And they don't have to worry about all the other bits that go on, because that's taken care of by other people or by the senior leadership team. And they just focus on that. And they work hard. And as a teachers, when they come, we expect them to work hard. But then we also expect evenings and weekends and holidays to just switch off totally, and we encourage that. And all our staff, that is your time. That is your time with your friends. That's your time with your family. That's your time with your holiday. But well-being for staff is removing all the nonsense that you have of having to fill in reports and loads of data and loads of marking and ticking boxes and all that. So just planning lessons or filling in lesson plans. Plan your lessons. Don't fill in a lesson plan. Marking. It's just come in and teach. Done the job. Go home and switch off. I think that's the best thing we can do. And removing the pressures of an accountability system and never putting any of those pressures on teachers. As leaders, we will feel the pressure because that's our role, and but our job is to protect teachers, that we don't need to talk about anything external in the school. We just need you to just passionate about your subject and teach your subject to students.
I think our job as leaders is to remove the shackles that have held teachers down and to let those teachers teach. It's emancipating staff. But when you talk about well-being, what is true well-being? I think true well-being is where your job does not impact on your home life negatively. That's true well-being. So when you're coming to work and you're going home and all you're talking about is positive stuff that's happened during the day, where if you're miserable at home because of work, then that's the well-being's all wrong. And so for us as leaders, we want to ensure that all of our colleagues go home and that they have a great time at home. They can switch off. Because for many years, I've talked to loads of people where they just cannot switch off from work. And that will impact your well-being sooner or later.
Yeah. And presumably the fruits of this are a happier school, happier students, better standards in every area, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Totally get that. So when leaders say, I'm not doing any of this for Ofsted, do you believe them?
Certainly here, 100%.
Don't do it for us.
Here. 4 years ago, when I took this role on for the first time, I said, we're not going to talk about Ofsted. Because you've experienced it before in different leadership and in different schools. You've experienced, Ofsted want us to do this and do that. And our focus is what's best for our young people in our context. So every decision we make, it's what's the impact on the pupils and what's going to be the impact on the staff. And it's not about what are Ofsted going to think about this.
No.
And Ofsted are, something is always going to be there and it's going to be in its place. But if you run a good school with a great culture, thinking about pupils and thinking about staff, all the other things you just talked about, the results and so on and so forth, it'll all just happen, and it'll happen naturally, and you'll do really well, and the students will do really well. And if Ofsted want to come in and really have a look around and either say, yeah, you're doing a good job, or looking at the framework, say there's these areas to focus on, I suppose you'll look at that and you'll move on.
Yeah.
But as a school, we made a conscious decision not to talk about Ofsted, and so actually some of our staff will have never heard of the word Ofsted mentioned.
Well, I won't mention it again. I don't want to incur your wrath. So you've talked about the culture you're trying to create and have created. What advice would you give? Because there'll be people watching this, whether that be now, whether that be later, who are in a very different situation where they might be experiencing what I might call a toxic school, or a school where workload is exceptionally high, where marking and assessment policies are out of control, where behaviour is an issue because it's not being tackled. What advice would you give to the classroom teacher, or perhaps middle leader, in a school who wants to challenge the status quo? What do you do from the bottom up? Is there anything you can do from the bottom up to challenge the status quo and try to create a better culture?
It's difficult.
That is hard.
I would say it's very, especially as if you're a classroom teacher 1, 2, 3 years, and you're in a toxic culture from the top.
Mm.
It's,
Would you all be advised to leave?
I think you're always, and I've told the trainee teachers, when you choose your job, choose it carefully. I said, talk to the head, talk to the staff, talk to the children, get a real feel. Is this right for you? Is it aligned with your values? Is it somewhere you think you would flourish? Ask about the development opportunities. Because as a teacher, it would be hard to influence. And if you challenge the status quo, and if you're working in a culture which you are talking about, then it might become even more toxic for that. But there's so many good schools out there, and there's so many great leaders in lots of good schools that you can choose one, or you should be able to choose one that you feel is aligned. And if they talk about recruitment and retention crisis, there's quite a lot of opportunities to get the right fit. But it's really digging deep under the school to make sure that it is the right fit and it's not some sort of superficial on the surface fit. And I tell the trainees here, if a school doesn't let you go and wander off and talk to students and talk to the staff without being constantly watched, then you might have an issue with that school. You might not.
Yes.
But when anybody comes here, I'm confident that whoever they talk to, and that can be from pupils, site supervisors, canteen teachers, SLT, anybody, that they would all probably talk a similar message, but be passionate about working here. And that's the sort of school you want to work in, where you want to love working in. So I think it's choose carefully. It's difficult to challenge the status quo. You could try, but it depends on the leadership of that school.
Yes.
And it also depends on what that toxicity is as well, and at what level. And if that's coming from the head teacher level, so it's at the core of the school, then you've got real issues, because sometimes the toxicity can come from middle leaders. Sometimes it might be that you've got a head teacher who's who's not toxic, who's running what they believe is to be a really great school. But you could have some middle leaders that could run off piste, and they go off piste, and therefore and they really need reining in. So again, like anywhere else, it depends on the context. But if it's deep down and it's at the core and it's at the head teacher level and it's all emanating from the head teacher, then I believe you've got no other way than to move on, and to be very careful about where you move on to. But that is so easy said than done in some particular areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you think, and you might not know the answers, but do you think that your students are, and you know, I wouldn't know how you measure this, but are happy here? Are they happy students? Are they, and how do you know? That's a strange question, but it's an interesting one.
It's like in society, you're always going to get some people who are going to be really happy, aren't you? You're going to get some people that don't want to go to school. And I've got 4 boys at home.
Hang on, this is sunny Blackpool. What do you mean people can't be happy?
And some days they don't want to go to school because they want to sit at home and lie in their bed. But they're still happy at school. Doesn't mean they're unhappy. How do we know here? Because the children smile a lot.
Yeah.
When you pass the corridor,
I've seen that as well.
Sometimes when you're in that corridor in transitions, every child wants to shake your hand and say good morning and smile and make eye contact, and you try to get them to lessons quickly, but they're also wanting to say hello and they want to tell you about their day or tell you about tonight, and they just want to have that general conversation. But I think in the school and actually in the trust, there's a lot of laughter and there's a lot of smiling. I think that's a good measure. You're always going to get grumpy teenagers. They're not all going to be smiling because teenagers are grumpy.
Yeah.
That's life.
Well, quite.
And sometimes you'll get that, and like in all walks of life, and because there's 1,050 students, you might get some that aren't as keen on it as others. But here, children laugh a lot, smile a lot. The staff laugh a lot and smile a lot. We laugh a lot and smile a lot. And I think that's a big part of what we've created. That it's a fun place to work.
We also asked them, we did something called poverty proofing, which is through Children North East, and you ask children, all 1,050 children, about what they think of the school, but in different ways, different questions, and when you go through those questions, and we did it in a really splendid way, I think, because we had somebody from poverty proofing who came in who they were the lead, but they took some of our year 10 pupils, and we had pupils questioning other pupils. And the reason that you do that is you don't have the teachers questioning the pupils, because they might give you just the answers you want to hear. But when you've got children asking other children in a way, and those children were trained before they were asking questions, so they went in and they were looking at different strands of the school. And what came back was a really positive picture of what the children felt about the school in particular, because we did it at a time of real transition where we're really moving as a school, and they really felt as though the things that we're putting in place were good things overall. We've got the odd complaint. We don't like the fact that you've taken mobile phones away.
Right.
But the vast majority
I was
of
going to ask you
children
about
really
that.
supported.
Phones-wise, is it zero phones?
Gone.
And
Zero.
phones
Zero.
are out.
No
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of the earliest things that we did,
Yeah.
and it was a really quick fix and changed lots of behaviours overnight.
It did.
So it's for any school. If you have mobile phones, my advice would be just ban them. It'll make life simpler instantly.
All out ban.
Yeah.
They have them switched off at the gate and then switched on as they leave the gate.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's
And
it.
how do you police that? How do you ensure that?
If a student is seen with the phone out, it gets taken off them, and then it gets taken off them again. So we keep it.
Keep it for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's got past that point. So it might go for a month maybe, but nobody's got past that point.
and you know, and obviously in lessons, you know, and I asked you this question before, but in a lesson, you know, we're in a lesson now. John misbehaves in some way, or doesn't follow a rule. What is your sanction system? What is your step system that you have here to get the behaviour to where you want it to be?
Again, it's a very simple system, and it's lots of schools probably adopt it. The child gets a warning to correct their behaviour, depending if it's, and we would say poor behaviour is turning round or not sitting up straight or not writing as much as you should do. For us, that is also classed as poor behaviour.
Yes.
So you get a correction on that. and it happens again, then you're out of the lesson and you're working with the head of subject, working really, really hard. And then all our detention systems are centralised and led by the senior leadership team as well. Previously, 4 years ago, there were 6 chances, which was crazy.
But I think that's common. I think that's a common thing to have 4 or 5 or 6 warnings or steps. But you don't think that works?
I think that's just... it doesn't work, because if you've got 30 students in the class and you give them 4 or 5 chances, there's 200 opportunities for a lesson to be disrupted. I actually think give them a warning at this stage, and we're thinking about going to a no warning system, because once we reduced it, there was no loads of students out of lessons. What we found happened was loads of students started getting it right. There was less disruption, there was less detentions, there was less poor behaviour, such as not working hard enough, and the students were just doing really, really well. So it actually took more pressure, took a lot more pressure off our system, because more students were getting it right. Because that came through poverty proofing. Students don't want lessons disrupted.
Just for people who are watching, what is poverty proofing? Just quickly. What is that?
Poverty proofing is it's a huge questionnaire that you do with all of your pupils, but really you're looking at, the whole point of it is to look at the disadvantaged pupils in particular in your school, and what they feel as though is happening during the school day. So it's for example, it's the cost of things during the school. So how much does it cost in an average school day for your dinners and also for your uniform, for going on trips, for this, that and the other. What's behaviour like? What behaviour systems like on you? What do you think about them? But really, when you look at it, when you scratch below the surface in a lot of schools, now I'm talking about schools that I've worked in, so if it's different for your school, then I'm not talking about your school. For the schools I've worked in, I've noticed that children that are disadvantaged are usually don't attend as much, are usually punished more, and usually don't make as much progress, and so there's a reason for that. So what we want to do, and what we wanted to do, was try and scratch below the surface, and instead of us coming up with reasons and solutions, ask the children what are the solutions that they would come up with in order for us to make it a more equitable day. And in other words, what we want to really do is we want to close that disadvantage gap.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased to say that we are doing. Can I say that poverty proofing has a direct impact in what we're doing? Well, yeah, because it's changed the way we think in some of the things that we're doing.
Because I've had debates over this, and I actually had one. Jennifer Webb, if she's watching, we disagreed on this the other day. She probably isn't, but if you are, hello. We were talking about pupil premium and the kind of this idea of narrowing the gap, and how to narrow the gap. Now, some would say on one side of the fence that the way to narrow the gap is just good teaching and learning, whereas perhaps another side of the argument might say targeted or focused interventions and focused practice in lessons.
I'd say both. I would say both for all pupils. If they're not doing what they should be doing in class.
I presented it as a dichotomy there. It's not as simple as that, but I think
For me, all pupils should be making progress in class. And if they're not making progress, then why are they not making progress? And so we put in things in order for them to make progress. What we want to do is we want all children to have the same access to great education. So if that means that you have to put in interventions for certain children, regardless whether PP, not PP, SEND, not SEND, whoever they are, high ability pupils, whoever they are. Of course.
I think what I was referring to there was this idea of marking pupil premium books first, or stickering pupil premium books and then asking them questions first in lessons, regardless of the flow of the lesson.
I think
that's where
we just have the same high standards and aspirations for all the children, and we don't go out particularly to target. Let's target that. We just have it. This is our standards. This is our benchmark for every single student, every single day. And like Chris said, intervention is needed at times, because that's part of life, and for whatever reasons they will need it, although we want to move away from that as much as possible. Yeah. But you've got a great, really tough curriculum, you've got great teachers and a great culture, and there was high aspirations for absolutely everybody. As we've seen here, the disadvantaged gap will close, and the non-disadvantaged will continue to improve at the same time.
Yes. It's knowledge, right from year 7. It's getting it right for all pupils in year 7, and then into year 8, into year 9, into year 10. So in many schools, and I think, and again I'm only speaking from my experience, but in schools that are in measures, in schools that are noticed to improve, in schools where the culture is difficult,
Yeah.
you're doing everything and the kitchen sink in year 11 and it's pressure cooker city in year 11 to try and get the standards up. And it's like you're trying to cram the last 5 years of education into a few measly months,
Yeah.
when really what you want to be doing is getting it right from the beginning and closing those gaps, understanding what the issues are. And I'm not talking about closing the PP gap there, I'm talking about closing the knowledge gaps so that kids know absolutely what they're talking about when it comes to the GCSE examinations, but not for that really. It's so that we give them a really broad life experience in school.
Perfect. And my last question, and I'm gonna go over there while you two answer it, so you can squirm with this question. is I want you to try and be as honest as you can. Do you think that being a leader in a UK state school is sustainable longer term? And I suppose while you're answering that, I'm going to say bye, and I'm going to say it's been absolutely fantastic visiting your amazing school, seeing the kids, seeing the classrooms. Brilliant. Thanks, gents.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And you can answer that question. Do you think being a leader in a UK state school is sustainable?
Okay. I think it's an easy question, an easy question to answer, and the answer is yes. And again, it boils down to having a school or working in a school that you want to work in, having a culture that you want to work in, having a fantastic team of senior leaders and also teachers. And when I think about myself, and in this role, this is a job I want to stay in forever.
Yeah,
Every morning when I wake up in this job, I'm out of bed after I've lifted that dog off me, but I'm out of bed with a spring in my step, looking forward to coming working with fantastic people and fantastic children. And if you get that right, I think it is sustainable. And you just have to be resilient.
You do.
At times, a lot of the times, and you have to forget about all the accountability and just focus on what you have in your trust and what you have in your school to make it work. What about you, Chris?
I just think that having that job where you can go into school and you can help form the life chances of young people in order for them to achieve and aspire to anything they want to do, what better job could you do in the entire world? And if you're a leader of that school, then it's not only like when I was a teacher, you had the children before you and you had 30 children at a time, and it's about impacting those children, and what a massive privilege that is and what a huge responsibility. But then as a leader of a school, that responsibility increases. And I think fundamentally, as a leader of the school, it's your responsibility to ensure that all children have those same life chances, and I can't think of anything better.
And is that sustainable then?
Absolutely.